New details about the classified material found at President Biden's Delaware home and the fallout. Here's what we know this morning. The White House confirms the president's aides found 5 additional pages of classified material on the same day a special counsel was appointed to investigate the matter. That brings the total number of classified documents recovered to about 20. The White House counsel's office announcing it will no longer answer questions about the controversy because of a special counsel investigation underway. President Biden's personal attorneys say that they have been trying to balance the importance of public transparency with protecting the integrity of the investigation. But the president has not been transparent enough for House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. He is demanding more information from the White House.
Well, we don't know exactly yet whether they broke the law or not. I will accuse the Biden administration of not being transparent. Why didn't we hear about this on November 2nd when the first batch of classified documents were discovered?
Well, Democrats are coming to President Biden's defense, determined to highlight the differences between Biden's handling of classified documents and Donald Trump's.
We were delighted to learn that the president's lawyers, the moment they found out about the documents that day, turned them over to the National Archives and ultimately to the Department of Justice. That is a very different posture than what we saw with Donald Trump.
So let's bring in now CNN's senior White House correspondent. There she is, standing in front of the White House, of course, MJ Lee. MJ, good morning to you. Look, there is a difference, but if you're explaining, you're losing, because over the weekend we got yet another update for more documents being found. So what is going on here?
Yeah, good morning, Don. You're right. Yet another update from the White House counsel's office over the weekend about more classified documents that were found that we weren't previously aware of. We are talking about 5 additional pages of classified documents that were found at President Biden's Wilmington home on Thursday night. This is according to Richard Sauber. This is a special counsel to the president. He says that he went over to the Wilmington house with DOJ officials to hand over one classified document that had been discovered on Wednesday, and it is at this point that this group discovered the additional pages with classified markings. Now, he says that the DOJ immediately took over those documents, and that now that a special counsel has been appointed to investigate this matter, the White House counsel's office is no longer going to be answering questions.
And the president's personal lawyer put out this lengthy statement over the weekend trying to defend how everything has been handled so far. That's kind of tricky. Again, so many details. I'm not sure if the American people can parse the details. I'm sure they know the difference. But at the end of the day, MJ, one person had documents that were mishandled, another person had documents that were mishandled, and then maybe that's just how the public is going to see it. But what did the lawyers say?
Yeah, I mean, we are clearly seeing the White House playing defense right now. As you said, the president's personal lawyer, Bob Bauer, put out a pretty lengthy statement over the weekend trying to explain the different processes that the White House and lawyers around the president have followed throughout this process, and particularly explaining why lawyers couldn't really disclose all of the information that they knew at any given time for fear of interfering with an ongoing DOJ review. Now, I just want to read a key part of that statement from Bob Bauer that I think tries to explain a major part of this process. He says because President Biden's personal lawyers do not have active security clearances, whenever a document bearing classified markings was identified, the search was suspended of the box, file, or other space where the document was discovered, with the potentially classified material left in the place as found. Now, he says the government was then promptly notified. It is for this reason that the president's personal attorneys do not know the precise number of pages in the discovered material, nor have they reviewed the content of the documents consistent with the standard procedures and requirements. Now, the White House has faced a ton of questions about both the messaging and just the transparency front. And I think what we can say with certainty right now is that it is very possible that in the coming days and weeks, we could be learning about additional classified documents. We just don't know.
Boy, MJ Lee starting us off at the White House this morning. Thank you, MJ.
So let's talk about this with the legal heavyweight Donald Eyre. He served in the Solicitor General's office under President Reagan. He served as Deputy Attorney General under President George H.W. Bush. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So we were struck, thanks for coming on, because we were struck by two op-eds in 2 days in two different publications. One was yours in The Atlantic with two others on the byline. The title is Biden's classified document should have no impact on Trump's legal jeopardy. And then there's this piece in the Washington Post, quote, if the Mar-a-Lago case collapses, disaster dodged America. That one argues that a case against Trump, quote, will probably not be brought no matter how many side-by-side charts are created to distinguish between the known allegations against Trump and the, parentheses, so far unknown culpability of Biden. It goes on to say, according to the latest Gallup data, 45% of Americans identify as Republicans or leaning toward the Republicans, 44% Democrat or lean in that direction. The Justice Department serves them all, and its credibility rests on being perceived to play fair. So you wrote in your piece one of the most superficial parallels. Only the most superficial parallels can be drawn between the two. But I just wonder, Donald, if you think in the eyes of the public, these cases are just inextricably linked.
Well, that's why we wrote the article we wrote, is because it's certainly true that when you have two presidents, one current and one past, who both have, it's fair to say their teams and them perhaps have mishandled classified documents. It's really important to understand what conduct's at issue. And as far as we know now, as you just accounted, the Biden people clearly made a blunder in having these documents taken and taken away from the White House. There's no two ways about that. But it appears, from what we see, and time will tell if it's true, but it appears that they don't have any interest in concealing these documents. They're not trying to keep these documents. They're as eager as anybody to get them back where they belong in the government. And Trump's team and Trump himself, it appears from the evidence, have actively been engaged in essentially figuring out ways to not give them back over a period of many, many months. Now, it's that intentional concealment and obstruction that gives rise to criminal possible prosecution. And that's the key difference here. So I think what's important is for the public to try to understand essentially the critical difference, why it matters to have a former president deliberately keeping and concealing classified information of the highest sensitivity. And I think Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has actually handled it quite well by appointing special counsels, because clearly there are people out there who are going to say, even though I don't think it's fair and I don't think it's justified, there are people who are going to say, oh, Merrick Garland works for Joe Biden, so Merrick Garland's in the tank and he'll do whatever Joe Biden wants. Not true, but much better to have someone who's actually an excellent lawyer, but also a Trump appointee looking at the Biden situation. So I think that's where we are now, and I hope people can learn from it.
That was really back to back as it pertains to the Biden documents. Merrick Garland sort of went out of his way to make sure it was Trump appointees, first out of Chicago and now the special counsel, a Trump appointee as well. I do wonder, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, says subpoenas are on the table for the Biden White House in this case. If that happens, if you were working in this White House, you worked under two Republican administrations, but if you worked in this White House, what would your advice be?
Well, I think it's clearly inappropriate for Congress to be investigating an ongoing investigation of an ongoing criminal investigation. They can look at it after it occurs, but they don't have any right. It's really a separation of powers violation to come in the middle of an ongoing investigation and essentially try to disrupt it by, I guess what they want to do is make public what's going on in the investigation. One of the very sacred things about our criminal process and the investigative process that the Department of Justice engages in is that it's not supposed to publicly pillory people or facts that are under investigation. The job is to investigate, figure out what the facts are, figure out if there's a case to be brought, and then bring it, and then talk about it. But you don't do it while you're investigating. So I think clearly one would resist these subpoenas with regard to the ongoing criminal investigation.
So you think McCarthy's wrong when he said yesterday on Fox News, there's an obligation for Congress to do this now.
Yeah, well, I think certainly they have a right to do oversight, certainly of what the executive branch is doing, but they don't have a right to get into the specifics of an ongoing criminal investigation. I mean, I'm afraid what we're going to see is, really an effort that's entirely aimed, talk about politicization. It's entirely aimed at trying to politicize the situation in a way that they believe will appeal to far-right MAGA Republican supporters. And they want to stir up that pot. And it's really regrettable because this country doesn't need to have controversy and conflict stirred up anymore at this point.
Former Deputy Attorney General Donald Ayer, thanks very much for your time this morning.